Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Stoned Out. This week's guest is Liz Entin, host of the WTF Just Happened podcast and author of WTF Just Happened. She is a very sweet, kind-hearted lady. We both have beliefs that come from a different background, and we had a fantastic conversation. I enjoyed talking to her, and I enjoyed listening to what she had to say. And she asked me a couple questions about what I believe. And we just had a great conversation all the way around. And I hope you all enjoy this episode as much as I did, because it was just very cool to hear somebody else's beliefs. And I hope all of you enjoy this episode as much as I do. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you on another episode of Stoned Out.
I gotta find this place, gotta get away. I can see myself spending all my days, wasting all my time lying in the shade with you. Come away for a year.
Premise sounded so much fun when you wrote me. I'm like, this will be a really fun combo.
It will be. I'm very
Yeah.
interested to hear what. I guess I'm just more interested in your story on how you got to diving into the afterlife part. And I wanted to start out by saying thank you for joining me on this podcast. And I wanted to ask first that did you come up with a religious background, or were you raised any kind of religious?
Not at all. I was pretty much raised like very secular atheist, like culturally Jewish, but never believed in God or anything spiritual. Just like half Jewish, half Christian, but like Easter bunny and like Hanukkah's 8 days of presents, like, and a lot more involved in like the Jewish culture than anything religious. So no, zero belief in God, zero belief in anything spiritual.
So we're for the Christian side of it, were you part of the C&E club? And that, I mean the Christmas and Easter club, to go to church or anything like that? No.
No, like we sang Christmas carols. We went to church to sing Christmas carols. That was it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
like if you'd asked me at like 8 years old what Easter was about, I would have said the Easter bunny and chocolate. Like I didn't know about anything else. I don't even know how old I was when I learned what it actually meant.
So being atheist, like when did you come to realize that you were an atheist, you didn't believe in any kind of God or higher power?
I guess I didn't even really think of myself as an atheist until I started researching all of this, because I grew up in such a secular culture that when people ask what's your religion, I would always say like half Jewish, half Protestant or half Christian. And it was so secular that didn't even mean a belief in God. Like belief in God was just so irrelevant in my life. I mean, maybe some people did, like, again, secular Jewish. There was a lot of bar mitzvahs that I went to when I was 13, and people would say, you know, stuff from the Torah, but it just, it never like went past that. It was just it wasn't like I grew up like a lot of people who say, oh, I'm an atheist. It's kind of reactionary to growing up in a religious culture. But to me, that just seemed like the default. Grew up in New York City, and then I went to college in Austin, Texas, where people are from all over. So I met more people who did believe in God, but it was just like, I was just like, oh, that's, you know, like, I don't, that's cute, sounds really condescending, but like, okay, that's sweet, that's great, like, that must feel good, whatever. It was just so irrelevant. I just can't even remember really having conversations about this stuff. And most of my friends were overall more on the secular side there too anyway. Not everybody, but again, it just wasn't really ever part of my life. And then it was just something I sort of was a given.
Were your parents atheist as well?
Pretty much. I mean, it was just something we never talked about. It was just like my dad was raised Jewish, my mom raised Protestant. I don't think we ever had a single conversation about God, like ever. Like all I do just remember once hearing something that I thought sounded interesting about near-death experiences. I guess when I was very little, they were like, "Oh, when you die, you go to this place in the clouds, heaven."
Mm-hmm.
But it was like the same time they were also like, "And there's Santa Claus," and so just all sort of
It's a fine line.
dissipated.
It's a fine line.
Yeah.
Like the story of Santa Claus still I still like to believe in him, but like we all know, like I woke up one morning and I saw my dad carrying presents through the hallway. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
all right. But
Yeah.
um so
Yeah.
growing through life when you would run into conversations about God and a higher power, did it always kind of like weird you out or make you feel a little uneasy talking about being an atheist?
I did. I mean, that's the thing. I didn't run into those conversations.
Okay. All right. It was
Like
just
growing up in New York, like very secular, very
okay.
like went to like a secular private school, like very about like intellect. I mean, it just seemed
Mm-hmm.
like it just wasn't ever part of my dialogue. I mean, if it was ever dropped into a conversation,
That's really
maybe it just
interesting.
came up. But yeah, I guess that's not the typical American upbringing. But in New York, in certain neighborhoods and areas, I guess, yeah, I it just never really
Hmm.
came up
Now what
until
pa-
college, some, but like
now what part of New York were you growing up in?
in Manhattan.
Okay.
So
St-
yeah, yeah,
okay. Manhattan. That's interesting to me.
yeah.
And so going to when you were getting to write the book, what was the first thought process? When did you decide to I want to write a book about this?
Oh God, it was very much an evolving process. So the story of where I even began researching afterlife and found scientific evidence. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what you know about my bio, but my dad passed away. My very first thought was, wow, okay, so if all the neurons in our brains create our consciousness, and this happened once, could this ever happen again and create another me? I wouldn't be Liz again. I'd most likely be someone else, but
So you're talking about
I
resurrection? Or not so much reincarnation.
no.
Reincarnation. That's
Eventually it
yeah.
came to that, but that
Okay.
wasn't my initial thought. It was just like the dumb coincidence of brain neurons creating a consciousness that's me happened once.
Mm-hmm.
Why could I not be another person again, just getting to experience consciousness? Not me, not tied into me,
Mm-hmm.
like a totally different person, but at least experiencing consciousness. But then that evolved into, I guess, a type of reincarnation because I found that was the first Google I did of the thought of an possibility of an afterlife. And I found doctors Jim Tucker and Ian Stevenson. Ian Stevenson has since passed away, but they were our professors at the University of Virginia and child psychiatrists who study cases of kids with past life memories from a very science database perspective. And that was the first hint I got that there is something going on beyond
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, but in actual science-based data studying if we survive bodily death in some way. So that just immediately opened the door. But getting to a book was a very long process. I mean,
Take me through the process.
was
Take me through the process.
sure. Oh my God, this wasn't even close to my intention. If you had told me when I started researching this that I did this, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. Like I wasn't going to tell anyone. I thought I sounded like a crazy person.
Yeah.
So I just started researching further and further. So I'll just back up. The thought I had before finding doctors Jim Tucker and Ian Stevenson was my how so much of science fiction ends up coming true. And sorry, I like taped my headphones because they were breaking. I have this awkward tape here, and it probably looks so weird on camera. So
I
just if
if
anyone's looking and like, what is that thing on the top of her head? My headphones like broke like 2 days ago, but they're really good, so I taped them because I
if you wouldn't
they
have said
work so
anything,
well.
I wouldn't have even noticed.
Yeah, I just like noticed in the camera like that looks weird. So just if anyone's wondering what that little weird thing is, just put it down because it's a little distracting. Um, so my very first thought before that was how so much of science fiction tends to come true in so many
Mm-hmm.
ways. And was there ever any possibility of time travel? And if so, like get my dad to the future in like 10,000 years or even less, maybe 2,000 years when medicine's a whole other
Mm-hmm.
ball game. I mean, and it wasn't like a literal actual game plan. Like, I wasn't crazy. I didn't think literally, oh, here's the solution. We're going to time travel. But it's just one of those when you're in like that super griefy state and everything's running through your mind and
Mm-hmm.
kind of don't know what to do with yourself. So I Googled that and I started to read all about time travel from like Einstein's theory of time relativity. So I was like, this is amazing because yes, time travel is actually theoretically possible. It's not very practical. Like we haven't figured out the technology to build
Time,
rockets
yeah,
that could travel
yeah,
like
time machines,
faster than the
period.
speed of light.
Yeah.
Yeah. But theoretically, I was like, okay, so time behaves differently than we perceive. So then I was like, if something like time, and then also that there are all these other dimensions, like the dimensions of string theory, most likely, like what else is there? That's how I came to the thoughts on children with past life memories, or that's how I came to the thought about neurons creating consciousness. That's how I found Jim Tucker. And then
Okay.
from there, that's kind of
Okay.
how my whole story opened up. So you have the background now. So
So with time
yeah.
travel, like you know what, time travel would be interesting. I think I don't know if what I would do if I had a time machine. I don't know if I'd go in the past, maybe stop myself from doing something, or go into the future and see how things came out. But um, with writing this book, did you start to see? Did you start to ask questions even about the afterlife, like about what could it be? Is it just lights out, or do we get to go to a nice clouded area and sit around a bar with our loved ones?
Yeah, I started to, that was the thing. I started finding that whole division of perceptual studies at the University
Mm-hmm.
of Virginia, where they were also studying near death experiences. I found Dr. Julie Beischel and her husband and co founder Mark Bacuzzi, and they are co founders of the Windbridge Institute that does up to quintuple blinded studies on psychic mediums. So I spent about a months in bed just reading all this data on scientific evidence of afterlife, of
How do you feel about psychics?
so I personally think there are a small percent. Well, psychics and mediums are two different
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
Psychics read living people's consciousness, the probabilities of future outcomes, um, supposedly what I guess could be considered a type of mind reading.
Mm-hmm.
And then mediums connect with people or consciousness who've passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a well-known line in this research: all psychics, all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have come to think that there are a percent that are genuine. They are getting information under tight controls where they can't cheat, they can't unintentionally get information by normal means, and are not general information like they loved you is not counted. And there's a small percent that are getting highly accurate information under very tight controls. And that's just absolutely inexplicable by our understanding of how the world works.
I've sat down with one psychic, and it was at a flea market, and I was like, let's just go down this road and see what happens. And she told me about something in my past that dealt with a girl wasn't finished yet, and damned if she wasn't right. Like
Wait,
it's
was it specific, a specific thing, or she said it like there's something in your past with
there.
to do with a girl?
There was something in your past that has to deal with a girl. It's something is unfinished, and she was right. She was absolutely right, and for it and
Okay.
till this day,
Okay.
and even beyond, I'm still gonna believe in psychics. I think they do have a strong connection with that kind of thing.
Did you? What did she get? Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
was she specific or she literally? Because there's ones that say, I mean, there's a.
Yeah,
I have to say,
she
as
was
someone
a
who's
she was
researched this, that sounds a
she was
little
very
general.
she was very vague with it, but it was like within a couple months, a girl from my past came back into my life, and it was like,
Okay.
okay, all right, I'm a
Okay.
believer. I'm a believer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how long did it take you to write this book?
Wow. Okay. Because it wasn't a very direct process, I would say it took me like 5 years,
Mm.
4 years, because I had no intention of writing it. I started doing the research. I started, I went in initially assuming just, first of all, just blown away when I found Dr. Jim Tucker. I was like, if this is true, this is the world's biggest game changer ever. And I assumed there was a catch. So I kept going further and further, finding psychic mediums, reading about scientific studies from even like the early 1900s, studying ESP and people, a small percent of people who are able to read, you know, read what are called Zener cards. Like there's a study called the Pierce Pratt study where
Mm-hmm.
uh, they were able to get like 95% accuracy across great distances too, knowing what cards were being pulled next. So I just started reading all of that. And I had, again, was not telling anyone I was doing this. I started to blog about it just for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And
It takes a little bit to get comfortable with getting yourself out there about
yeah,
certain things.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And just bit by bit, I started like writing it and just writing it. And then some people were like, you should put this into a book. I was like, okay, I'm going to completely disguise it. And I disguised and got beta readers. And people were like, well, you disguised it so much. It doesn't resonate. Like I made it that my aunt died instead of my dad. And like
Mm-hmm.
just, so people were like, it doesn't even emotionally resonate. I was like, oh, so that means I have to like not only tell my personal story, I have to hurt getting evidential readings with mediums, but I'll do that, but I'll use a fake name, which
Yeah.
I ended up. So it was like a long process. And then I'd say over COVID, I was like, I've just got to move forward with this for many reasons. One of them, my mentor in this world sadly passed away.
I'm sorry
And
to hear.
thank you. I appreciate that. And she'd become like a second mom to me. And so she was a huge part of my book. And I was just kind of like, I've got to go forward with this and I just have to own it. Whenever I would say to her, like, oh, I can't tell anyone I'm doing this. This is weird. She was like, yeah, you'll get over it. That was just her personality. And I'd become good friends with a lot of the mediums I was studying at this point and some of the researchers. And I was like, I just have to own this. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I still feel weird about it, but there were a
Mm-hmm.
lot of delays, like deciding I was going to write in the first place, learning to write, learning to do you self-publish. I'd reached out to publishing houses at first. I ended up self-publishing, but it was like, just a it was a learning curve, which took it much, much longer process than now I'm writing a second book and all in the end, that's going to probably take me a little under a year to publish.
Any
So
sneak peeks for your second book?
yeah, so it's part two. This book, What the Fuck Just Happened, ends in 2018. So
Mm-hmm.
the next one picks up in it's 2018 through, I guess, 2021. I kind of skipped 2020 and just put it into one little chapter where I'm just like
We all
nothing,
skipped 2020.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
never existed.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly.
so getting back
So,
to like the psychics and mediums, how interesting was it to sit down and interview mediums?
oh my God. It was, well, I didn't start by interviewing them. I interview them on my podcast now. Initially, I was reading everything by Dr. Julie Beischel and all her studies of up to quintuple blinded studies on mediums. I read her book. I was reading on the Wimbridge website, you can download actual protocol studies. I was reading those and I was like, okay, if this is true, I've got to see this for myself. And then I started to read a book by a medium, this medium, Laura Lynn Jackson. I was reading it same time as I was reading a book on string theory. So I didn't feel like a crazy person. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I've got to get a reading. So
What was your first reading like?
it was amazing. I got so lucky because I had initially reached out to Laura for a reading under a fake name, completely hidden identity. I had found Laura Lynn, the woman whose book I was reading, I'd found her name because she works with a lot of the scientists I was reading. So I reached out. I saw she'd been certified by Dr. Julie Beischel at Winbridge. And then I reached out to another scientist, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, who's like researcher, scientist, had, I believe, she'd either attended Johns Hopkins Medical School and then taught at Harvard, or the other way around. But she was like not a woo flaky person, and she'd given me Laura's name, and I was like, gotta try this woman.
Mm-hmm.
But Laura has like an astronomical wait list. So in the meantime, I was at this
Mm-hmm.
other like random event with my mom, who thinks all this is complete bullshit. But one of her colleagues had passed away, and this woman was like, the wife of her colleague who passed just randomly started saying she'd gone to this amazing medium. And my mom's like, oh fuck, like my daughter like won't stop talking about this, and now
Like,
we have this other
let's
person.
give it a
So
shot.
yeah,
Yep.
let's give it a shot. So I got the name of this medium. She had a short wait list, and I was like, it's going to be horrible. She's never been studied by scientists. She doesn't participate in any of the research. Like, she sold crystals. I was like, this is going to be like a joke. But like, my heart was pounding. I mean, there was a lot of emotion attached. She was amazing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
evidence, facts, evidence, evidence, evidence. And
Mm-hmm.
I found out some of the mediums I know now know her, though she's no longer giving readings. And they were like, this medium would be so good for you. All she cares about, she's like not into any of the love and light stuff. She's not into like, she's like, oh, don't need to bother with the I love you messages. She's like, all you want to do is give facts and evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what my reading was like, which is exactly perfect for me for a first reading.
Mm-hmm. So when
So
you started interviewing these mediums for your podcast,
yes.
how did the conversations go?
Well, I mean, the first one was one of my close friends, who's also an amazing medium, Joe Peretta.
Mm-hmm.
The one after that, Renee Buck, another close friend, also medium. I mean, the first batch of mediums are mediums I'd already vetted. I'd known them for quite a few years. They were among the first group I met, had readings with. I knew they were good. And so it was kind of having conversations with friends
Mm-hmm.
who I trust. But I told them I'm going to ask them a lot of the types of questions I asked early on when I didn't believe any of this. So, it was good conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know.
So when we're getting to around when the book is published, how are you feeling about it coming out? Are you nervous, a little excited?
Oh God, all of the above.
All the above?
Nervous.
Yeah.
I'm still just like, how? Like, this is not like every part of how I've understood myself and envisioned my life. Like, I'm not a spiritual person. I never was into this. Sometimes I'm like, wait,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, how did this happen? And I felt everything, like excited, nervous, like a little uncomfortable, really like proud, really terrified, really a combination of very proud and very embarrassed, because I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, person, not only is this a little bit weird, I also talk about some personal things like grief related. And
How many people reached out to you and talked about your book that bought it?
oh God, quite a few do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot. The majority don't, but
Yeah.
there's a good amount that send emails, reach out on Instagram. Some have become good friends of mine too. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
love if you're listening and read my book or listen to my podcast. I love if you reach out. So
Mm-hmm.
quite a few do. I mean, not quite a few, but like but there's a group that do, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy when they do.
Yeah.
Very, yeah,
So I have an interesting question, and I
go for it.
really wanted to ask this. It's just how,
Sure.
in general, do you feel about passing on? Like, do you worry about
Oh.
death? Do you worry about what's going to happen after you close your eyes and take your final breath?
I have very mixed feelings.
Yeah.
I have, I think, like being in a body, we all are physiologically programmed to panic about it. We have biological survival instincts. I still very much believe in like Darwinian evolution. I think our bodies have evolved for that. And so, someone, I've never been the world's best flyer. So when there's severe turbulence, I panic. If someone like ran at me with a knife, I would probably absolutely freak out physiologically as much as I always did. If I got diagnosed with an illness, I would do all the treatments. In the big picture, I don't really fear death though, at all the way I used to. I mean, I don't want to die tomorrow. There's a lot more I want to do with my
Mm-hmm.
life, but I don't. I used to fear it a lot, and now I don't. I'm not. I mean, a part of me does a tiny bit because I'm not 100% convinced we survive bodily death, but it seems I'm pretty convinced. So yeah, and I mean, I don't fear it anywhere near the way I used to. I think it sounds, yeah. I
Personally,
mean,
for
like,
me, like this is always a standing joke I had. If I started working out, getting in shape, the next day I'd walk out of my apartment, get hit by a vegetable truck. Like, hot damn, shouldn't
maybe.
have done it. But on the other end of that, like, I'm really looking forward to seeing that white cloud and to seeing all my family members and sitting at a heaven to me is sitting around drinking at a bar with my family members and the dogs that I miss.
Oh, that
And
sounds nice.
And whenever I get that thought, even a little bit of that thought, I panic, but then again, I'm calm about the panicness because it's like, I might die. But then again,
Mhm.
I know where I'm going. You know what I mean?
So you think there's an afterlife? You're
Oh, oh
convinced,
yeah.
if I can ask you a question.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Ask any questions you want. Yeah. I believe in an
Okay.
afterlife. Yeah.
Why do you think that? What's your reason?
Well, I'm a big believer in God. Uh,
Okay.
and I, I've not always walked with him, but he's walked with me.
Okay.
And the reason why I believe in an afterlife is because it gives me a sense of peace that I
Hmm.
know that I'm either if I'm not a good person, I'm going to the fiery after place. You know,
Oh, so
and
you believe in the traditional definitions of heaven, how
oh yeah.
purgatory?
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Well, earth to me is purgatory. Like
Hmm.
we
Okay.
have to make these decisions in a world that is, we all can see out in the world now that it's kind of a dark place right now. And how are we
It
going
is
to
in many ways.
and how are we
Yeah.
going to be a good person in such a dark world? You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
definitely want to be a part of the heavenly bar.
Hmm.
So, but I
Okay.
grew up Catholic.
Okay.
Um, Now recovering Catholic, as is the joke.
Recovering. Okay.
I'm real spiritual, not so much religious, but
Okay.
it's always given me a sense of peace through life. So
Okay.
that's my backstory.
That sounds like a nice backstory. And
Hmm.
do you miss Catholicism being a part of it or
No,
no?
not at all.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I enjoy people. Like if I'm randomly at a restaurant and two people want to talk about God and church and whatnot,
Hmm.
that to me is a church.
Okay.
That to me is where at
Mhm.
church.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and coming back to the afterlife and the science in it, how long did it take you to do the research on this science? Because I am a fan of
Yeah.
science too. I love science. I think it's an amazing
Yeah.
feat. I think we do
Hmm.
plenty I think we do a lot of great things with it.
Hmm. Oh yeah. I mean, I'm still in the middle of the research. It's
Hmm.
like endless.
What kind of
So
research are you
I'm
doing right now? Like, what's the biggest subject?
I mean, I'm still reading a lot about the data and studies. There's constantly new studies. I've just started learning more about NDEs, near death experiences. I mean, I've always followed those, but now I'm going to a conference on that I'm going to cover on my social media and podcast.
Hmm.
IANS, International Association of Near Death Studies, has a conference.
Hmm.
I just came from a conference at the Society for
What
Scientific
is a
Exploration.
what is a conference like for that?
Wow. Well, this will be my first near death
Okay.
one. The
Okay.
conference I just went to for the
Okay.
Society of
Yeah.
Scientific Exploration, they had different speakers who have done research of the various types, some based
Hmm.
on types of healing, some based on non local consciousness. Some more science-based than others. I had the few that stood out to me
Now, what does
personally.
non-local consciousness mean?
So it means consciousness not created by a brain. It means it's not, it's like external to your brain. And I would probably guess quantum entangles with your brain to create
Okay.
kind of like the cloud, like how the cloud works with your phone and computer. All the
Okay.
content is stored non-locally instead of created locally with your brain neurons, and quantum
Okay.
entangles with your brain neurons or quantum tunnels, however, that process could work
Okay.
to create consciousness while you're in a body, physical body, this physical body.
Okay. A lot of people would
Yeah.
say AI would be that way.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
a question. That's
Yeah.
what I don't know. Gets into
It's
philosophy.
yeah, it's
You,
that's a tricky
yeah.
triangle. That's a tricky triangle. But we'll get past the
I
AI. That's for a different
I mean,
story.
who knows? Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, if you get a consciousness, a AI that's said a business that claims it can upload your consciousness when you pass away, and they also train it to mimic
Would you do
consciousness,
that?
like, is it actually conscious?
Would you do
I
that?
think I'd be curious, and I would maybe, yeah. Would you?
Ooh, if you put me in a 12-foot robot's body, I think I'd be cool with it.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
don't me just sitting there in a hard drive. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I would do it in a hard drive for like 5 years, just out of curiosity to see if it
Mm-hmm.
worked.
Mm-hmm. And
And the
then
thing will,
and
yeah.
then
Oh,
upload to
sorry.
yourself to a whatever you want to upload yourself to, and then see what the difference is in 5 years.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
That would be
yeah, like I
interesting.
mean, yeah, and then just go on and die, like go to your not, the next realm, and just
Mm-hmm.
having had that experience, I think it'd be a fascinating experience. I would consider it science.
There's this one movie I watched called Replicas with Keanu Reeves, and he could do that. He could take the consciousness out of a body and put it in another one, or in a.
Yeah.
It's it's a really good movie. Um,
Replica? I'll
yeah,
have to watch it.
yeah, it's really good. But that is one of those things where like you can't avoid the afterlife if you do that. You know what I mean?
But do you want to? I mean, I think the afterlife sound. I mean, I don't know. Actually, my mentor would say this. So we use the word afterlife, but I think it's not correct. I think if I could guess, and this is a hypothesis, I'm not saying I knew this, that our consciousness quantum entangles endlessly and eternally with different states of consciousness, some physical, some non-physical, probably in different dimensions, some on different planets, and we just sort of pulsate in and out of different states of consciousness where, like, as the way we sometimes could fly to different countries or
Mm-hmm.
be in different states, like in an airplane, in a car, walking. I think one day we'll be visiting other planets, not too far in the future. I mean, some people already have. I think we'll be, well, not other planets, but we've been to the
And
moon.
some
I
of them
think
are
we,
coming here. Like
I think so. Yeah.
aliens. How do you feel about those?
I absolutely would be shocked if there weren't aliens. Are they coming here? Like all the UFO Congress? I think there's something. I haven't drawn a final conclusion. I think most likely. I think whatever they're saying is fascinating, but I'm also convinced there's been life on other planets
And me
because our
too.
universe is
It
vast.
is, and I'm
Yeah.
sure that there's other planets with other life forms. Like let's
Yeah.
get realistic here. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was kind of funny. I was listening to a podcast, and there was just like the aliens. The U.S. Congress is holding something about aliens, and nobody is shocked. Like
And no one's
yeah,
shocked.
and nobody's shocked. Like shocked, like surprise. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it sounds like there is something with UFO crash that makes sense. I think whether there was alien bodies in it, there's talk about that. I don't know, but I don't find it shocking if that shocking that there were UFO crashes here.
yeah.
I mean, we've sent robots to Mars. We have cameras out in deep, deep space.
Mm-hmm.
Why could someone else not have done that and have it happen to come here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked if they roll past this like we are not getting on this planet.
I know. Like, but yeah, I mean, would they be any better than us? I
True,
mean,
true. Yeah,
yeah,
there could be another planet out there with some guy eating Cheetos.
yeah, yep, yeah, doing all the crazy stuff that's going on here, destroying the planet with, destroying the environment, taking away human basic rights. I mean, all the crazy shit
Mm-hmm.
that's been going on in this planet.
Yeah, they better bring some cool phaser guns though.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm looking at your website right here, and
Mhm.
it says Afterlife Science No Woo. And I'm
Yes.
kind of wondering what the no woo means.
It means, I mean, there's so many ways I can word this. It essentially means like I would rather talk about Dr. Julie Beischel, who's
Yeah.
gone up to quintuple blinded studies with mediums. I am fascinated by the research that I'm still struggling to completely understand by Sir Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff, who've worked with Stephen Hawking to try to figure out ways consciousness could maybe quantum entangle or send
Mm-hmm.
information in these ways that I believe involves a type of something called quantum tunneling through a brain, which could show that it's downloading non-locally. I want to talk about it more from that way. Or Dr. Jim Tucker, who studies case of kids with past life memories from a data-based perspective. I want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about as much like the woo. It's like just talk about this stuff in a very believy, non-verified way. I'm not that interested if someone's like love and light. I mean, people I respect who also have worked with scientists who I think are very smart sometimes do approach things more that way. But to me, woo is just it's a way of talking about some of this, but not asking for any verification, not
Mm-hmm.
expecting verification. And I think yeah, I've never really analyzed what I mean by woo so much, but I think also part of it is a little bit drawing larger conclusions than we have evidence for, like saying we know what it's about and
Mm-hmm.
saying this is what it means instead of saying, well, that's a hypothesis. That's based on what I've seen, a lot of it inexplicable. This could be this.
Mm-hmm.
It's being like, yeah, just sort of very believy based and very like not so interested in the data.
Mm-hmm. So I did. This question just popped in my head, and this is a random
Sure.
one. With believing in no God and no higher power, do you believe that we all have souls?
I don't know what we mean by soul. And I wouldn't say I don't believe in a higher power or God. I've just never seen evidence. I think
Yeah.
that's an astronomical claim. It's like
Mm-hmm.
jumping 30 million steps ahead from evidence that our consciousness is behaving non-locally. Like, why would there, and what do we mean by a God? Like a Judeo-Christian God? Like, so what does souls mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do I think, I guess maybe if I describe this, some people might say that sounds like what someone else could say is a soul. So I think if I could guess how this all works, again, total hypothesis, our consciousness is stored in some type of quantum particles.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it could be measurable in this planet with something like a insanely advanced Large Hadron Collider. Maybe it never could. Maybe it's not measurable in
Mm-hmm.
this physical dimension, and that's where it's stored and that's where it stays. And parts of it quantum entangle with the experience of being right now me as a human, and then when I pass away, all these experiences of me as a human return to that non-local consciousness and quantum particles that keeps me and has aspects of myself that are always going to be me and aspects of myself that probably change based on different experiences, just the way some of us change as humans. Like parts of
Mm-hmm.
us are exactly the same as when we were 2 years old, and parts of us are very different. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like stored in that quantum particles are like data of experiences, consciousness that gets to experience things, personality, a type of emotion, ability to love. So is that a soul? If would someone else call that a soul?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's never a word I would use, but
Okay.
I don't know. Would you call that a soul as someone who's more religious?
I believe, yeah, I believe in that. Uh,
Okay.
like, I believe that the soul can be the consciousness of us. So
Okay.
it's that one little. I don't know. I've seen a lot of videos where when someone died at the moment, they got like 0.00000 amount of pounds lighter because they believe that the soul left the body. So
Okay.
I've seen a couple of videos on that, and it was just wildly fascinating for me.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I don't know what I think about that. I
Yeah,
haven't. But
it's still a little like, I don't know. Maybe he could have farted. You know what I mean?
yeah, I was thinking
Yeah.
like fluids and
Yeah.
like all the air pours out of your
Yeah.
lungs. I was more. I think I
Yeah.
would go there
That is a good
first.
point. The air going out of your lungs. Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so Liz, where can we find you?
You can find me at on my website, WTFJustHappened.net. And you can also link to all my social media there. I'm
Mm-hmm.
really especially active on Instagram, which is WTF underscore just underscore happened underscore. You can also connect to my email from my website, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty responsive. If you have a little bit of patience, I will get back to you. Sometimes I just might be a little slow, but I'll get back to you.
Mm-hmm. And I will make sure to link all of those in the show notes for you.
Great. Thank you.
And Liz, I do want to thank you for coming on this podcast, and I enjoyed this conversation.
I had so much fun. I want to thank you so much for having me.
And I want to wish you a good night, and I hope
You
to
as well.
talk to you later.
Same. Thank you.
You have a great evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.